Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kimberly Blackringan. Welcome. I am so sorry that I could not be there in person with you today. But if I understand, I am projecting onto the hub screens. But with this amazing technology, I can still greet you and welcome everyone from where I am. This is an exciting opportunity. This is an ongoing partnership that we have with Carter Rock, one of our most popular events, as you can see from the attendance in the Zoom room, and I can see some individuals in the hub as well. So I will start us off with some welcoming remarks and an introduction of our guests. And then the hub team that's in there, Eduardo and Anthony, will be able to help facilitate from there. So without further ado, I would like to introduce two of our guest speakers, Dr. John Barkyam, who went to St. Michael's College in Vermont, where he found a love for physics and challenging problems. After getting his degree, he worked on and received a PhD in physics, working on optics and material science. After postdoctoral research at the National Synchronic Light Source at Brookhaven National Lab, Dr. Barkham started working for the Navy researching radiation detection materials and is now the Director of University Engagement at NSWC Carter Rock. So welcome, Dr. Barkham. I see you from the camera, so welcome. Thank you for joining us in person. Our second guest speaker that's joining us virtually is Dr. Anthony Malatesta, who completed a BS in mechanical engineering at the University of Maryland through the Southern Maryland Engineering Program, where he interned with NACAD Cost Department. Upon graduation, he was accepted into a doctoral program at the University of Maryland, focusing on thermal fluids engineering, and transferred to the NACAD Propulsion and Power Department, becoming a fuel systems technical area expert supporting H60P8, MQ4, and VH92 platforms. While completing his PhD, he started the Thermal and Electrical Modeling Lab within the Propulsion and Power, establishing power and thermal modeling resources to support the naval aviation enterprise. Additionally, he has supported the Southern Maryland Engineering Program as a teaching assistant and then lecturer, and has recently been selected as the Director of Engineering Education and Research Partnerships for the NACAD Strategic Education Office. Welcome, Dr. Malatesta. We're both here virtually, and so I'm glad that we are able to offer this amazing program. I'm going to hand it over, I think, actually to Dr. Barkyam to get us started. Thank you, everyone, for taking time to join us. This is an exciting opportunity that we have with this partnership, and for all of our students at Montgomery College or wherever you're joining us from around the country. So without further ado, Dr. Barkyam, take it away.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. As you said, my name's John Barkyam. My last name is a little hard to pronounce, or people stutter over it, so you can just call me John when you're asking me any questions. And I'm going to start out here. This is our flyer, so let's go right away to the next slide. So myself and Dr. Malatesta are going to give you a snapshot of the local laboratories. And one of the biggest challenges with these slides, and I'll admit it right up front, is that the Navy labs and what we call the research, development, test, and evaluation, which means the full thing of the ideas, the science, all the way to making something happen that's good for the Navy and the nation. We got a lot of labs. We have a lot of places. And being the government and the Department of Defense, Department of the Navy, we have a lot of acronyms and lingo. And try as hard as I may, I can't remove them all. And some of the things are fairly complicated. But that's not important. The important is the main message. This is exciting work for the nation. It's great work, I think, as a career to consider in the laboratories, not just mine that I know the best, but the local labs in the area and all the labs across the country to which these programs. And even if you don't want to, if your head is not thinking of that yet, in terms of internships and things you might want to do as you decide what you want to do, We will have information on here of what's your next step, how do you apply, how does this fit into what you want to consider, because you have many opportunities, you guys and gals here have great opportunities to do things over the summer and consider your career with us and with other people. We want to give you some good information. So I'll give you that snapshot of who we are and what we do. So I'll talk about my lab. I'll talk about the local ones that are in the area that we partner closely with, but a lot of it applies across the entire laboratory system. So let's go to the next slide, please. So again, on the same, who are we here and what do we do today? So right away, I'm starting with big words within there. So so there's the Department of Defense, Army, Air Force, Space, and Navy. I'm going to speak mostly about the Navy. Some of the internships are both. That's something you can read about in that. And we're divided up since we're so many people to do this work because it's such an important mission that we're kind of divided up into areas. And the first one that I have on here, because the one I belong to, is the Naval Sea Systems Command. And what do? We do everything that's ships, submarines, machinery, the combat systems that go on them, the things that blow up and shoot, the mines, what's called strategic systems. Don't worry too much about that right now. And so that's an umbrella term for 10 of our laboratories. So there's 10 of them. Each one is, many thousands of people. So we're talking, 35,000 people across the country just in that part. So when you think of, if you think of the Navy and you think of the things, the platforms that are out there, and you think of the ships and everything that makes them go and shoot and not get shot at and hide and move, that's a lot of this. That's the Naval Sea Systems Command. So it's an umbrella term over the laboratories. And that's a little picture of my laboratory that you'll see in a later slide. One of the other big divisions, and it's so important that it has its own, is the Naval Air Warfare Centers. This one, to me, is always easy to explain because everybody knows Top Gun is years old now, and we have new Top Guns. So it's everything related to things that fly that are part of the Navy. That's the beginning and the end. And so it's helicopters, unmanned, takeoff and landing, carriers. This is really cool stuff. That is Dr. Malatesta's area, and he will talk about that. But the theme of the type of work and the type of people we want to hire is the same across both. There's also an air weapons system, and they're on the West Coast, great place, but they're not part of today's talk. There's also the Naval Research Lab. They couldn't be with us today. So this is an unusual thing, and it actually doesn't exist in the Army and the other services in the same way. It is a more pure, in quotes, research lab that does advanced science and technology, and they're across all the disciplines that the Navy, and so it's a fabulous resource for the nation, and it's right here in DC. So it's the Naval Research Lab. So the other labs, the one I'm part of, all have a particular focus area. The Naval Research Lab is everything that's naval research. So highly skilled, the top, really world class in that. Something else to consider. Next slide, please. Which I think will, bumper sticker, next slide. So it's along the same theme, same idea, but same idea with a map. So the Naval Sea Warfare Center you see down on the left, that's a picture of all the parts of where Carderock is. You'll see that picture later. Naval Research Lab. And in the middle is a map of the DC, Maryland area. So Carderock, if you're here, right here in the Montgomery County area, which some of the people in the room mostly are and others, it's right out here just outside the Beltway in Bethesda, Maryland. And it's called Carderock because that's the natural formation, the area where it is, the Naval Research Lab. I'm here today also, they're here because I'm talking about them, they couldn't be here personally, is this NSWC, Naval Surface Warfare Center, Indian Head. Why are they called Indian Head? Because they're in Indian Head, Maryland. And they do energetics and explosives, and I'll talk about them. And NSWC Dahlgren Division, it's named after a famous admiral who developed some of the first gun systems in the Civil War. And they're down on the Potomac River, just when you cross from Charles County into Virginia. across that bridge. And their location is key. That also in here, that is part of our local communities, the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab. The Marines are part of the Navy, and the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab is a much smaller one, but they do very focused on research just for the Marines. So just in the interest of time, we're not going to talk much more about the Naval Research Lab and the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab, but we'll talk about that. And a lot of it's the same. By the way, the next slides and all the slides, a lot of them have QR codes. Obviously, you can just grab the QR code at any time you want. And there's links in here, but this PDF of these slides will be made available on the Ignite Hub site almost immediately afterwards. And a lot of the links go to the national programs. So, and you'll see some of the same links are repeated.
Actually, John, we are going to email to everybody that registered for
Even
this
better.
event, the presentation and the recording.
Excellent, excellent. And thank you, because we are making a recording of this. It goes up on YouTube, and then we'll get the links for that so that you can review any part. Next slide, please. So, leaping right in with I want to tell you about the Carter Rock Lab. I like to talk about this. This is where I've worked. So we are part of this Naval Sea Command, looking at the ships, and our job within that is basically, when you think of a ship or submarine, picture all the things that make it go that aren't the weapon systems and aren't the explosives and aren't the communication systems. Now, I'm telling you what it's not. Those belong to other laboratories, some of them I'm talking about. What is that we're worried about? We're worried about the entire design and integration of the ship. So this is engineering writ large. This is system engineering. This is actually making it all work together. The specifics of the hull form, all the hull forms, the hydrodynamics, the mechanics, the materials, the structures, the analysis of everything that floats in or above the water, in or below the water for the Navy is a result of work at Carter Rock. And we do the environmental quality systems. We're the only ones in the nation who do that. All of the thing. If you have a aircraft carrier with thousands of people on board, it's something that everyone doesn't think about. Just like in your home, you don't think about the community environmental system and the sewage system and the water system, and clean water and the garbage disposal. We do all of that. It's not the sexiest part of that, but it's absolutely essential for us to be able to move around the world and do our job. Vulnerability, survivability, those are big words. Specifically, we do everything from the materials they now understand to make sure that if anybody shoots at us, we minimize or even eliminate the possibility of damage. And the last one is maybe they won't even find us in the first place within that. So everyone thinks of stealth fighters and cool things. Well, all of the ships and all of the submarines also have that capability. And that's a very, very strong area. And we are really the main person in the Navy with the experts that do that work. On the right-hand side, and I'm not going to read these, you can read them later, is sort of a history of everything we've done. That's been our story for, over 100 years, 125 years, when they recognize that we really need to design and understand and do these ships in order to have the best Navy in the world. Next slide, please. A little more on Carter Rock. So Carter Rock, on a following slide, I'll show you where we are in the rest of the country. But this is right down here in Montgomery County, in the lower left where you can't see it, below where it says America's Fleet starts here. That's I-95 and the bridge, I-495, and the famous American Legion Bridge that goes across the river. Bridge goes across the river. Traffic cars occasionally actually make it across the river in rush hour. Usually they sit there for 2 or 3 hours. And that's the Potomac River on the left. You can see the C&O Canal, again, familiar to all of you Montgomery County residents within here. And of course, the most prominent thing you see here that's about 5/8 of a mile long is our towing tanks. And these are the largest test facilities in the world for testing models of ships to design how the ships work. We are world leaders in what's called computational fluid dynamics, the science, mathematics, and engineering of using computers to calculate how the ships will behave. And that's not just like towing them up and down in a giant bathtub. It's also analyzing how they interact with waves, how they interact with other vehicles. And those multiple facilities that I won't take the time to name help you achieve all of that. One of the things you see here is explosive test pond. And I said, well, we don't do weapons. We don't do, what do we do? We work with people at the effect of some adversary's weapon on our ships. How does it affect the structures and the materials? Because we know that better than anyone else. We work with some of the Indian head folks, for example, on that. So we have a ship design section. So this is the headquarters. Most of the 2,500 scientists and engineers that are in our lab are here, but they're also in other places. So next slide. Actually, okay, it's not the next slide, but that's a great lead into another slide. So this is the Carderock division, and I have this what we do slide. And before I even mention any of the words on here, this theme is common across all of the laboratories that I'm talking about today. Our hallmark, whatever our responsibility is, whether it's cool jets on aircraft carriers or it's submarine stealth, we do what's called the full spectrum from basic research to developing a system that works, the engineering, to testing it for the fleet to make sure that it works before we buy it, spend a lot of money on it, deploy it, put it, absolutely in almost every case, the tolerance for failure once you deliver this into the hands of the soldier or the sailor is zero. I mean, it has to work. It has to do what we want it to do. I think the only other agency that, there's recent news of submarines, and the submarine program in the Navy is the best in the world for calculating submarines, crush depth, the maneuvering, and all of that. There's no room for failure. I think the only other it comes to mind is NASA for similar, where there's no room for failure. So within that, the best engineering principles that have come up over the past 100 years is to do what they call this full spectrum. So what you see on the left, and I'll actually tell you about a couple of the pictures. The woman you see there on the left, she's actually inside a facility that magnetically tests submarine models. So we have computer models for a submarine, how it acts magnetically, and you make a magnetic model, and those are all coils that she's adjusting in there. And obviously you can tell and she's actually head of that whole division that does that work on magnetic silence. In the middle is a test and evaluation facility that's actually, you would never guess where that is. That's up in Alaska. It's in essentially a fjord in Alaska. There's only a few employees there, and they take full-scale submarines and test them for acoustic silencing in this very quiet facility. And actually, allied navies, such as the Australians, come up and test there. Below that is also on the theme of silencing and testing is a facility that those are large coils that you put a current through and they make a magnetic field, and you can magnetically test the submarine. So instead of bringing the submarine to the facility, you bring the facility to the submarine. So that's just one small section in terms of magnetic silencing. On the right, you see R&D. That colored picture there is a software picture. Some of you use CAD designs and some of the other software picture of a prototype ship. We do all of the ship prototyping, working with companies that do the same thing for advanced ships. Some of these concepts, you'll have hundreds of different concepts before they decide which one to do. Again, doing it right is the best thing for the Navy and the best thing for the taxpayer. So it's that full spectrum of work. Some people don't do science. Some people do mostly science with labs. Next slide, please. So this is the one where it says where we work. So I'm still only talking about my laboratory here, headquartered in Montgomery County, right down the street off 495. But we have places where we work across the country. And when you look at these places, you get a little bit more picture of what we do in terms of engineering and support. Headquarters picture, same picture, I believe, within there. One of our big, going around the clock clockwise from the big picture of Carderock in the upper right, we have a large detachment. That's the word we use for people who work someplace else. It's called a detachment, is in Norfolk, Virginia. And what they do is everything we do, but they do it for small boats and crafts. So think fast boats, special operation boats, what's called riverine command for boats, the engines, the communication systems, everything related to those boats. they're so critical that they not only do it for the Navy, they actually do this for the Army, for their small boats. And they're down co-located with the Navy facilities and the shipyard and some of that in the Norfolk area. So very dynamic area. A lot, but not all of the rest of it has to do with, again, with our acoustic side of it, because you really need to go to the fleet because the fleet can't come to you. So in Florida, we have two facilities. You see Titusville, Florida, which is down near Cape Canaveral, and one in South Florida Measurement City at Dania, which doesn't sound like a familiar name, but it's right at the Fort Lauderdale Harbor, and it's actually co-located with the university there. And they do testing of submarines that go by in both places. So it's a submarine test facility. The next one is called it's the William Morgan Large Cavitation Channel. And unless you work in the field, when I use the word large cavitation channel, you kind of don't know what that means. I got people in the room here. Ray, do you guys know what a wind tunnel is? You've heard of a wind tunnel, right? Right, everybody's heard of a wind tunnel. When I came to work my area, then it's quite a few years ago, they started talking about water tunnels. And I said, I don't even know what that is. A water tunnel is a wind tunnel for water. You circulate the water and flow. So for certain experiments, it's much better to have a water tunnel than it is to have a ship that you're moving in an open thing. So this is water. Water is heavier. Water is denser. It's very complicated and technical to do. But when the day is done, it's a water tunnel. There's some universities have some, but not very many within that. So we do that at headquarters. They have these water tunnels. One of the key things you test, not the only thing, but one of the key things you test there is propellers, because it's a great way to test the flow through propeller separate from the ship before you put it on the ship, and then you can't, very hard to figure it out. That one is in Memphis. Why is it in Memphis? It got located there as a big facility, and it can test full-scale propellers from destroyers and ships. So it's the only place in the world to detect full scale. The next ones up through all have the same theme. They're in Idaho, Idaho, Washington State, and Alaska. These are all for primarily acoustic testing of submarine parts and ships. Part of it is why the Alaska facility, which I showed in the previous slide, just like the one in Florida, we have submarines on the West Coast, we have submarines on the East Coast. You can't ask the submarine on the East Coast to go all the way around the West Coast to be tested. It's an obvious thing when you think about it as an engineer. When you make these very complicated, some of the most complicated technical systems of submarine that men make, period, within that. And it has a certain performance. You know what it does. You know that it's quiet. You know it goes where you want when you steer it. There's no guarantee it stays that way. I mean, my car needs to be aligned every year, and that's not terribly complicated. So there's very few places that can guarantee and recertify that, hey, it's doing what we want it to do. And this can, oh, and by the way, you got to do that for 30 to 50 years because we don't want to replace these because they're just so expensive for the taxpayer. So that's a big part of our work, and that's what you see in those other facilities. Next slide, please. So this was only a brief snapshot, and I didn't want to go into a huge amount of detail because I have to talk about some of the other laboratories that we do at Carderock. So there's many more slides on this, but I wanted to talk this one right in here. This one is actually talks about career opportunities and how. So I want to throw that right in the middle of that. The blue one on the left is actually for the Office of Naval Research. Now that's something I haven't mentioned yet, but that's their education and outreach. So I've mentioned all the laboratories that are here. I mentioned the Naval Research Lab. Another institution that we established in the United States about the time of World War II was called the Office of Naval Research. They're not a laboratory. They don't do the research, but they are like the National Science Foundation and NASA and others, that they are the leaders for funding and planning and resourcing, that means money, for fundamental and applied research within the Navy. And they actually run many or most of these programs. So you'll see this ONR, onr.navy.mil, Office of Naval Research, many places. That one goes to their education and outreach page. It's their main page. Many of the programs I'm going to talk about in the later slides are all available at this page. So if you just had these two, you'll have Carderock and you'll have links to some of the programs. But I want to move right on to the next laboratory, which is my sister laboratory, next page, in Dahlgren Division, which I mentioned on the map. So again, it's the same theme of this naval sea. We work on everything that ships and submarines, craft, the small boats, unmanned vehicles. What Dahlgren does, and why don't you click through a little bit, because this is a click through, so stop. I think it'll do itself. It's done. Okay. Dahlgren focuses on the combat systems, the weapons systems, and the engineering of all the things. So if we we work with companies and large contractors and small to make the ships. But if you picture a Navy ship, whether it's a float or undersea, and we make the best ship we have, but then there's nothing on it, it's a nice cruise boat. The weapon systems on here, that's the Dahlgren stick. So some of it is missiles, and you'll see some of this is hard to read, but it basically is giving the same message I gave on the other slides. They do from the basic research, the test and evaluation, the systems engineering, the networks that connect them together. So now you see some of the communications that I didn't talk about from Carderock within that and advanced within that. And they do a lot of the analysis of what those weapons do, what could happen to them within that. One of the most famous ones is what's called the Aegis system. You don't see on it. That's the full radar and weapon systems that are on the ship automatic within that. So they do a lot of radar, for example, we don't do. And they have a history going all the way back to testing some of the first guns in 1918 for World War I, and again, named after the Civil War general. So they're roughly the same size as us, same number of researchers area. They do a lot of, not all, but a lot of the cyber work within that, because of course, these are all computerized systems within that. So for the systems that are in their area, they do cyber. Cyber is done at other divisions within the Navy also. Next slide, please. So Dahlgren is located on the Dahlgren, what they call the Dahlgren Proving Ground. Now, on the slide that I had as my second slide, when I showed them down in the Potomac, they were originally situated here, right across the nice bridge that goes 30. Right, basically, you can see it when you drive over, especially the new bridge down 301. They have a special airspace where they can shoot things or fly things across the lower Potomac River within that. So one of the things that we're working on was, and it was again a pure research project because they didn't know for sure whether it would make sense to put it on the ship, was an advanced rail gun and laser weapons. So you'll have things that they're working on that we have to work on them ahead of time before we know whether we'll use them. And you see a list of all of these up on the left, and more of their equipment and areas. A lot of these acronyms refer to the radars, the tracking, the testing, and everything you do for these weapons. You think of this, well, tracking things, you think of it as an air side, but there's a whole technology base to do that for these weapon systems and unmanned vehicle systems, and that's the Dahlgren Division. And again, as far as hiring and areas are very, very similar to us here in Colorado. Next slide, please. So click again. I think it's a click through one. So just like I had a slide that had the major areas that I work on, Dahlgren is their major ones. So electromagnetic and sensor systems. So again, you need this in order to find out if you're going to have these fancy weapon systems, you got to know what you're doing with them. You got to know what to see out there. Strategic computing, integrated weapons control, readiness and training, and actually the analysis to figure out whether it's doing what you want it to do. Next slide, please. Let's click again. So I had the slide with the woman in the electromagnetic. We had the 3 pillars. This is the same area where some of it, like the research and development, concept generation, is very early stage, very sciencey, what you would think. Prototype testing, you see more of the engineering, the engineers to figure out how to deploy these systems. If we make something and it's not usable out in the field, it's kind of a waste of time. So, Just like a company wants their product to be out there in the field to be used by the customer, we want our products to be out there to use by the customer. The customer for us is the Navy. Next slide, please. And the last one I'm going to talk about here is the Naval Surface Warfare Center Indian Head. So they're, again, more focusing on the local Maryland ones, but the same theme applies to all 10 of the laboratories. So the Indian Head Division is a unique one with a little more focused mission. They do energetics, explosives, and missiles and propellants within that. So you can see this picture. This is actually just a screenshot of their website within here. So, you know, research powder for ballistic. Let's go to the next slide. So their area is, and you can read these words, is manufacture, provide support of energetic systems. Energetics is an umbrella term, things that propel missiles. Most people have seen pictures, you know, a night launch of one of these, what's called a standard missile from the deck of a ship, and you see a bright flash. And just like a rocket that's propelled by NASA, they'll have a solid propellant or a liquid propellant or a mix of propellant. Well, those things are obviously dangerous. They're chemicals. You want them to do what you want them to do, and you want them to do nothing else at any other time within that. And again, the engineering and the safety, the chemistry, the chemical engineering, the physicists, the mechanical engineers for everything that you see in here is, so you can see that long. EOD is ordnance disposal. Again, this is something that people think of as cool things in movies. When you have something that's, especially if it's in a Navy owned thing and it's in the wrong place, and they got to figure out how to defuse and get that. This division has the teams that do that. So again, that's, you know, a little far from the basic science, but very, very interesting. It's now older than many of you, but there were the little over 20 years ago when the ship, the USS Cole, was attacked by terrorists and a hole was blown in it when it was in the Middle East and almost sank. They had experts from Indian Head Division come and make sure that the explosives on there were safe. They had experts from the Philadelphia Division, which is one I didn't mention, who are experts on the engines, make sure that they could restart the engines. They have experts from Carderock who understood the hull to make sure, and experts from communications from the West Coast, from a whole nother division, all come together to make sure that, you know, that ship didn't sink and to minimize the loss of life. So that's kind of the things we do. Literally, we have a good number of our engineers out in the field, and we have people who are doing nothing but computer modeling within that. So it's such a large range of jobs that it's almost hard to qualify with it. So, and now so I've talked about the only three of the 10 Warfare Center labs. The links that you'll see here for the interns, and I'll mention this again, actually have descriptions of all of these laboratories within that. So they have much better descriptions than I could give them. But what I want to do now is turn it over to Dr. Anthony Malatesta, who's in NOC 80, the aircraft division down in Southern Maryland, and he's going to tell you a few things about what goes on there.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
All right. I think maybe skip ahead a little bit. Either that or my slides are stuck. I still see Indian Head.
Okay. Keep going. I skipped.
There we go. Tell me when to stop.
One more. There we go. Actually, you can just go ahead and go to the next one.
I think we skipped all your slides.
Did we?
Yeah, go back up.
Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, you went through all of them then. Mine's just lagging behind. I think it's slide 20 is the one that I want to start on.
Okay.
There we go. I think I'm caught up now. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Dr. Brachium. So yeah, I'm Anthony Malatesta. I work for NOC-AD, as we say, Naval Air Warfare Center Aircraft Division. And Dr. Barkham obviously did a great job of, kind of walking you through from the top down what we do organizationally, and broke it down into these different laboratories. And yeah, as we said, essentially they kind of all do the same thing with different technical areas, and we're all working together to achieve the same mission. And NOC-AD is no different, other than we focus on aircraft. The organization that's kind of immediately sitting above NOC-AD is referred to as NAV Air. And so that just really encompasses everything with regard to naval aviation. And that's broken into the two main pieces of NOC-AD and NOC-WD. WD being weapons division, and then AD here, where I work, just focus on aircraft and everything that we do. So a long time ago, before I was doing this, I would think of Navy and I would just think, well, that's a bunch of, ships and boats, and that's all that it must be. And that's very far from the truth. To really meet the Navy's mission, aircraft are essential. And it turns out we have the biggest fleet within the U.S. Armed Services. And to support that, well, we have the busiest flight test center in the world. You can see that we are broken up across Patuxent River down in southern Maryland. Actually, I don't think I show it in detail on the map, so if many of you, I assume, are unfamiliar with southern Maryland, we're probably about 50 plus miles from DC. From like Bethesda, it's going to be about an hour and a half drive down to where we are, provided traffic's good. The other areas, Lakehurst, New Jersey, and Orlando, we have some sister work going on there, but the overwhelming majority of the actual flight activity takes place at Patuxent River. If we go to the next slide. Yeah, so really similar again. We're talking about very complex systems here. Like you saw on the ship side of the world, a lot of different things need to go right in order to achieve our mission. If you focus on these two aircraft that are shown in the middle, actually, just as an example, anybody know what's going on here? I'll engage you guys a little bit.
Refueling.
Yeah, good. Refueling. So the aircraft that's a little bit farther to the left, like in front of the two aircraft, the one that's in front, has a bunch of fuel on board and is actually delivering it to the other one. This is a real picture, by the way. First time I saw it, I thought this was just computer generated, but this is a real event. MQ-25, which is an autonomous aerial refueler, delivering fuel to this E-2D aircraft. And if you think for a second, step back and consider what needs to go right for all of this to actually take place. There's a lot, and it ties all the way back to the ship side. So what we do at NOC-AD is all of the engineering. Oh, is there a question? No. Okay, sorry. So all of the engineering, as was described before, that we need to do to get from, here's a concept. Someone says we have a requirement. We need to be able to fly this E-2D farther, for example. Well, what's one way to achieve that? We have to deliver more fuel to the thing in the air so they can stay up for longer. And so we get some sort of requirement like that. Well, we're going to have to do some research and some development and test and evaluation, all these big pieces that are required for meeting this whole mission from an engineering perspective. You look at the different subsystems that are on aircraft, and there's a lot of really cool ones that we get to work on. My background, which was brought up a little earlier, propulsion and power. So engines, those engines on these aircraft, they're pretty cool. There's a lot of really interesting engineering that has gone into making these types of engines over a long period of time. And there's still a whole lot of very interesting work that goes on to push them into the next generation. And that's some of the really satisfying stuff that we get to do, is just, yeah, keep these things that are already complicated and amazing, keep them working, understand what challenges they face now that they've been out and are working, and then how do we push them beyond. It's really fantastic work. Go to the next slide. So obviously to achieve this, we need an awesome workforce, and we need people like you. So definitely think about how rewarding this job is. I think Dr. Barkham and myself both can really attest that it's been fantastic work for us. And now it's great to work with people like yourselves, reach out and hopefully inspire you to come support this as well. If we go to the next slide, I want to just briefly touch on one additional sort of resource that we have in Southern Maryland. And this was alluded to again in my bio. What I went through to get my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering was this program, Southern Maryland Engineering Partnership, which we refer to it as a 2+2. So that means you're going to do your first 2 years at a community college. Generally, that's the College of Southern Maryland, but we have had students come through this program from Montgomery County and Anne Arundel as well. So if you're really interested in aviation, I strongly encourage you to check this out. Basically, what you are able to do is you can complete bachelor's in either mechanical or electrical engineering. And in Southern Maryland, we have a beautiful campus here. We had a new building built about 3.5 years ago, really close to our base at Patuxent River. It's about a 10-minute drive between campus and the base. And University of Maryland campus there, state-of-the-art, beautiful, nice and clean, small class sizes. But what you get is, while you're working on, your degree at a top-tier research institution, you get to work with professors that generally either work for the Navy now or have previously, and so they help you understand some of the problems that you'll face along the way. So you come in working for the Navy, if you choose to go that track, with really great knowledge and experience under your belt. And we also have these great internship opportunities. I think we're going to talk more about internship opportunities in some of these later slides, so I won't go in detail. We have a lot of overlap between what's offered in the different laboratories, but most of the students that go through this program actually have their tuition completely paid for and then have a job by the end. As soon as they graduate, they can walk right in and work full-time. And I think that's where I'm going to wrap it up. Turn it back over to Dr. Barkham.
Thank you, Dr. Malatesta.
Thanks.
Thanks, Anthony. So part 2 of the talk here is I'm going to go into specifics on some of the programs. This has got the QR codes and the links. So let's go right off to the next slide. And actually, this was put together. So this one is specifically for programs related to NOC-AD. So this is Dr. Malatesta was just talking about Southern Maryland, those particular ones. When you get the slides, those links should be live and they'll work. Mm-hmm. And they're the same link as the QR code. So, and so these are careers at NOC-AD. and internships. And you may find some of them are the same as that I'm going to talk about later, the national ones, and some of them may be unique to that. So that one is directly related to the slides he was just presenting. Next slide, please. So now I want to talk about university, and it says university student opportunities, but I'm immediately going to talk about high school at the same time. So the slide is not entirely labeled correctly. So one of the linchpins main program that we would like to use that within that is what's called the Naval Research Enterprise Internship Program. It's a 10-week summer internship program. It's paid. Someone's going to ask me on what the exact dollars amounts on there. They're on the website. I don't remember, but it's a good internship. Competitive, was the word I would use, at a Navy laboratory. So when you scan the QR code or click on the link, it's going to take you to the Office of Naval, that says navalinterns.us, but it's really the Office of Naval Research that runs these programs. And that will tell you, it's an excellent website. It's not one of these, oh my God, I look at the website and I have no idea what I want. It's a good website. They're well done, meant for that. It'll answer the questions, tell you the deadlines, what you need to do. It has a link to all the different laboratories that you can apply to. So you'll see us in here, the ones who I'm talking about today, but you'll see, I'll pick one. On the West Coast in San Diego is something called the Naval Information Warfare Command. Just like we have NAVC, NAVAIR, they're naval information. Guess what they do? They do cyber and information comms. Again, they're in San Diego. They're very similar to us. You can pick them because they're part of this program. You would have to go to San Diego, see how that works. Maybe that was something you're interested in. No different from us here. So you'll see every naval laboratory in there, all the ones within that. If you're and again, I like bumper stickers within here. If you're applying for the program, they ask you to pick 1, 2, or 3. It's either 2 or 3 laboratories as the first choice, as your first and backup choices. You can pick all laboratories, and that's fine. Great, pick all laboratories. Pick other ones. When the person I work with, Miss Charlotte George, who's in charge of the internship programs, we have a list of people who want Carter Rock, and there's many hundreds of people on that list. There's a spreadsheet we get for people who pick all and the rest, and there's thousands on that list. If you only pick all, we'll get it, but you'll be buried in to the other ones. So pick ones. A lot of them might make sense for your personal situation. Maybe you have relatives in San Diego and you have a place to stay and you really like it and you like that work. Try to reach out. There's contact information. You can reach out to the contact information. So everything you need to know. Again, in terms of bumper sticker, you notice it's open and it says generally closes. How about absolutely closes on November 1st? If you're considering this, I would say go there tonight and start to think about your information. Big hurdles, you have to have letters of recommendation. The recommendations need to be on their way and in the system to go. You need to write you need to write sort of a statement of what you're interested in, what you want to do. You need to get transcripts, and in case I don't know any institution where it doesn't take a few weeks to get those transcripts if you're starting cold. Maybe it's quicker in Montgomery County, but just in general, it takes a little time. There's forms you fill out for a security clearance. This is a US citizen only program. You fill out, now the best part is that you get what's called an interim or temporary secret clearance that allows you to work on our computer systems. That's a valuable thing to have. It takes a certain amount of time. It takes some time. It's not too bad, but you have to, say, okay, I've got a bit of work to do to enter that within that, and I want to have it. If you start thinking about this, say Columbus Day, you have a break in Columbus Day and you got only 2 weeks left, you're really under the gun to apply for this. So here it is. It is already exactly mid-September. You need to start thinking about this and doing it now. It's a little different. Some of the other great internships you'll see with companies have later dates. They can be around Christmas. You can be a little relaxed. You can take your Columbus Day break, even think about doing it at Thanksgiving. For these internships, you got to jump on the gun. So if you take nothing else away, that's within that. The second block here, that's the high school internship program.
Just to let you know, Kimberly is telling me that we have a lot of students from UC San Diego online. So
Yep.
it's great that you talked about that great
That-
opportunity at San Diego.
Yep,
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks. I know we've been chatting with them at Carter Rock, so that's a university we've been reaching out to with others within that. Science and engineering program. It's actually the same website. It takes you to the same place. That's the high school program. It'll say very specifically, I always get the question, if you're graduating from high school this year, you still belong in the SCAP program, even though you're going to college within that. But it's very explicitly says that's an 8-week paid internship. Usually folks stay local for that within that because it's not paid as well as the college one in there. That's a great program. So look at that if you qualify for that. Let's go to the next slide, since I can talk all day about these, but the best thing is to do within here. One of the things that most, but not all of the labs have here is what's called an SSEP, which is a same type of thing as an intern program, a different one within that. This one is not run by a national office of naval research, it's an individual. So this link here goes to the Carter Rock program for that. You should look at that within that, and you can apply and talk to Carter Rock about that. In many cases, we'll say you really should just apply to the NREP program. They're very similar, and we use that a lot of times, sometimes for returning NREPs. So that's something to definitely look at. Because it's not run under a schedule from a national organization that's year-round within that. And there's that's actually been redone within our HR portal, so something well worth looking at. The lower one is the exact same thing, but it's meant for folks who are not looking for science, math, engineering programs. So, and this is something we haven't stressed within here. Within all, I think I'm speaking for all of the other laboratories and myself, is we hire business folks with like machine learning techniques, mathematics, who don't want to work directly on the science, but want to work in the business. Those folks are super valuable. In fact, we have a problem. Montgomery County, I know college does such a good job in the computer science and the business areas. We can't keep these folks. We hire them in and they have highly valuable skills in many, many jobs. So we're always looking to hire that. That's what that one is for. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing, same rules. But it's specifically, if you read it in here, practical. So we'll have people work in our human resources, our contracting, our finance department within that. Great internships to have. If you have those skill sets for any federal job in terms of that, you can, it's good. Next slide.
Yeah, if we can, we have a question online. Kevin is asking, since USSD students are on the quarter system, do they have the flexibility on starting the internship later?
Yes. The answer is a firm yes. The details, you'd have to go into the program. And the program managers within that are very good at answering questions.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, and then there's other schools that are on a quarterly system. They're not all fixed. There's usually a range of dates, and we try to make that work. So that's an easy question. Next slide, please. The next one is the National Defense Science and Engineering Graduate. This one is for graduate programs only. And that one is open now. You notice the theme here. Everything is now. We are here exactly on a couple days after the mid-September. If you're interested in these programs, don't let grass grow under your feet. This is a very competitive program. This one is not Navy. We use this at Carter Rock quite heavily, and we use this to hire people who are they're doing their graduate degrees. So you apply to this program, they actually will fund your graduate research at a certain university within that. So you're thinking of it post-college. Now, looking around, that may be some of you online, some of you, not all of you, but it's good to know within that. And this is a program we definitely look at for hiring when we're hiring master's and PhD level people. So that's a great one to look at. They've redone their website. I was just there a couple days ago, and it's very informative on what to do with that. So, and those are pure scholarships. It's on the same page with something called the SMART Scholarship. This is a little more recent one. And you notice, open August 1, December 1. You actually got a few more days with this one again. We're right in the middle of that. SMART is one that was started up across all the services, Army, Air Force. Again, you'll see in the SMART website a list of all of the defense laboratories, not just Navy. This is a fabulous one. We are really trying to increase the number of SMART students. We have 10 or 12 within that. And that's for funding your undergraduate and graduate education. They give you a full scholarship. And what does full mean? It means your parents are jumping up and down for joy when you get that full scholarship. It also has uh, a service, what's called a service requirement. So if they fund you for 2 years, and that's a typical thing, you might apply as a sophomore and they fund your last 2 years of college, you owe 2 years of work within that. And the SMART program, and with that, has you work, maybe you'll do an internship or try to get to learn about a laboratory, to hook up with the right lab, to know what your employment would be afterwards. So it's a very valuable scholarship. That valuable comes with that requirement. So, you know, it's a good one. So that's one, very competitive, but very well worth looking at. SMART Scholarship. Again, I put it on the slide with the NDCA.
We have another question.
Yeah.
Tao is asking, can we take the internship at San Diego or do we have to move to Maryland for naval internship?
The naval internship programs, these programs on these slides are anywhere in the nation, but you should pick one that makes sense for you.
Mhm.
You should look, I can't speak, yep. Have to be citizens. Have to be citizens. Look on the individual, actually, I will take that back a little bit, is go and look at the individual program. For example, right here on this slide, the NDSEG, I don't know. So please look, don't consider me definitive. I know on the NREP one, switch back to the NREP. Can you go back up? Because I actually missed saying something. I know the NREP is one more. I know that one is citizen. It says so right on the site. Go and take a look at it. These sites kind of all link and you'll see. Some of the others may not be, so I'm not as familiar. So please just take a quick look and see it. They're pretty good and they're very good at answering questions.
Yep.
So
related question, John. Francisco is asking, what if we are US citizens but also have dual citizenship in another country?
I'd say that can be an issue. I'll tell you right now, that can be an issue.
Depending on the
You
country?
better go look at the website and ask that question. I don't want to answer that, so.
If the applying, do they need a letter from school stating the expectation graduation date?
I don't know. That's a quick question. They usually have a list of that within that. Certainly, I know transcripts are within that. You're actually repeating one of my main messages. Don't ever underestimate the time it might take to get that. And it depends on the program. NREP, I'm pretty sure, does not want, but they need to verify that you're eligible to be an intern in that summer in the freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year transcripts to do that. Your graduation date, I'm not sure they care about because that's not part of that. Now, the NDCAG, which is trying to get for graduate school, may want that. So you do have to look at the individual. They all have a Q&A, FAQ, and they should be very good at answering questions. I've actually been reviewing these sites. I've checked all the QR codes and was looking at them, and I was, they really seem to have the good questions. Let's go back. Oh, I did want to say NREP is also for undergrads and graduate students for internships. It'll say specifically in there. So it's not just undergrads. CAP is high school. Next. Keep going, down back. One more. What I'm going to do, so those are the ones I wanted to highlight. Please go to the links. The Navy ones are all linked together. So once you enter one of the Navy ones, you'll see them all. NDSEG and SMART are their own website. because they're all Department of Defense, which only means it's a larger program. I mean, that's not a bad thing in any ways. So what I wanted to do, it's not my last slide, but I wanted to jump right out here. Carderock has made, so my laboratory right here in Montgomery County has made a series of YouTubes that just came out in the last week or 2 weeks on NREP, on CAP. There are several where they're interviewing here, well, I'll have links later where they're interviewing people who were in the program this summer. So it's not me talking, it's not another manager talking, it's actually the students who are in there. So I really invite you to look at the YouTube site. They're about 3 minutes. And I only have this one directly linked. It's our manager for the intern program talking about it. So please play the video.
Hello, my name is Ashley Floyd, and I'm the Community Outreach and Student Engagement Coordinator here at Carderock. I am essentially the kindergarten through 12th grade specialist, where I bring field trips of all different grades here to see what Carderock does. And I also take engineers and scientists and technicians to go into the classroom and actually do STEM activities to tie the gap between what we do here at Carderock and what they're learning in school. One of the programs that I'm involved with here at Carderock is the Naval Research Enterprise Internship Program, and that program is sponsored by the Office of Naval Research. Office of Naval Research takes in thousands of applications, and they apply to all of the different warfare centers and Navy enterprise all over the country, and they're able to come and work alongside of scientists and engineers in the different various codes that we have for 10 weeks, and they get paid a stipend to understand what they are learning in school and how it applies to naval research. After we get the applications from the Office of Naval Research, we give them out to all of the mentors who have projects where they can take intern support, supporting the ship and submarine classes that we do work on. And so when we look at the different resumes, we take the unique skill sets and we pair them with the mentors that we feel will give them the best insight into what they're doing in school and how it relates to the Navy, but also that we can actually glean and learn from them as well as them learning from us to make our Navy better. Why does the Navy invest in the STEM programs in general, or programs like NREP, is one big example that I like to use. When you look on TV, you see lawyers, doctors, superheroes, and everything else in between, but you really don't see scientists and engineers and what they do. Carderock and the Navy invest into programs like NREP because it is so important for them to see about what they're learning in school and how it applies to keeping our sailors and Marines safe, but also into the technologies that we're investing in the future. It is important for the students to understand why they're learning the things that they're learning in school and why it matters. But the biggest thing is that they are able to actually get into the labs and see the different types of work that we do to support our fleet. And so it's important to invest in the future because we actually do hire people from our internship programs into full-time hires. But the best thing is they get to see what they want to do before they even get here. So that's why we really do invest into programs like NREP.
And I just have a couple, it's YouTube, you get all sorts of stuff on here. But there's on a later slide, there's a link to this video directly and a link to the Carderock YouTube channel, which has, I think one of them you see, we won't try to click on any of this, but this Miss Rihanna Solberg and Jacqueline Griffiths, those were interviews with people who were NREPs just this past summer. So 3 minutes, these young women will tell you, and men in some of the other videos tell you, hey, what they want to do. So let's go to the next slide. Oh. Yeah, so this is, I wanted to throw this in here for the deck for everyone in here, and I don't know how many faculty members are on here, but we have programs to bring faculty, research faculty in. Sometimes we're trying to encourage faculty to use the intern programs to bring them in. And this summer faculty research program, there's links for that in December, and a sabbatical leave program. You know, these cool professors you work for sometimes get paid to actually go out and work at another place so that they're fresh and get good ideas. And it makes for better, I'm joking, but it actually makes for better educators, better professors for teaching and research. And one of the things they can do is come and do a semester working with us. And it's a leave program, and that's a link to that. So that's some of the things we do for trying to get the academic researchers working within together with that. So they go hand in hand, but I wanted to make sure I have the program. So let's go to the last slide. Couple of these are more of the opportunities for grant programs that professors can work with. Some of these grants are always used to fund the undergraduate and graduate research in that. So that's what we do. We have an HBCUMI program that we try to work with historically Black colleges and universities. So those links are in here. So they're labeled as faculty opportunities. I wanted to throw them in, even though that wasn't the main topic. And let's cut one more slide. And that is the contacts. So you see Miss Brooke Bowler, Dr. Amanda Wilmot from Indian Head, who couldn't be here. I talked to her slides. So we have contact information. So many of the questions will be, like for the particular program, I'm going to direct you to those programs managers. I don't want to give you the wrong information, but I'm happy to take your questions. You'll have our email in here.
John, we do have a question
Yeah.
online. Bihan is asking, are there any opportunities for students who are taking a break from school?
That's a hard one to answer. I think you're going to have to look at the particular opportunity because I do have an enrollment requirement. So if you're not in, you may have, but you have to look directly at that. I don't want to give you the wrong answer. One thing you can do through that first link of career opportunities, if you're interested in literally just applying for jobs, you can apply and send your resume directly to us. Some of you may have, and before I forget, so those two links at the bottom one is to the video you just saw. The other one is to the YouTube channel for Carter Rock where the other videos are. I literally threw them in last night so that you have them. So consider that contact information of where to go. But many of you, some of you may have heard of, for federal employment, we are required many jobs to put them in USA Jobs, and you can go into these USA Jobs and look for that. USA Jobs is kind of like a difficult place to navigate. There's lots of stuff in there. It's kind of, I got to slog through all of that. For many of the engineering and science opportunities, we can take resumes directly. And those links are to say, apply for our jobs. And it'll give you the requirements, the citizenship requirement. We do actually pick an interview out of that. We would do jobs fairs, picking out of the people who directly apply. And those links have that to directly apply. So whoever asked that question, obviously a direct application for employment is not specifically a requirement to that program. So circle back to that answer, you do have to look at the particular program of how you're defining that break within that.
We have another question online. Renata asks, what if you're an early college student and currently a university student, but have not yet received a high school diploma? Can you do the college programs or only the high school ones?
That exact answer is on the website. I saw it yesterday. So number one, go and read that in case they have a slightly different nuance than me. But I believe the answer is if you haven't graduated, you cannot get into the college program. We have this, so I don't know where this person, I don't need to know where they're from, but we have a very active program here in Montgomery County. My daughter went to the same program where you're in a high school and you're taking college level courses. Many of them are, most of them right here at Montgomery College. And it's a great program. We have one of the best, educational systems in Montgomery County and the entire nation, period. Plug for Montgomery College, plug for the high school system. So they're taking like third year, second year college math as seniors, but they're still high school students for this program. And that question is right up front at the frequently asked questions. So I think the answer is you look, see at their answer, but I think they kind of make a firm cutoff.
If anybody here has any questions,
Yeah, this
is
is
the
like
time
the
to
end
ask.
of the, they're, yep.
So you say temporary term. Is that temporary access to the job that you're do and the term still stays with you, or is that for both?
It's what they call a secret level clearance. And then they actually will do like a full clearance, but they'll kind of put it on hold after the internship is over. Yeah. I actually sell this it's a bit of it's an extra pain within the thing. I'll be very honest that there's, it's a moderate level of application. It's not like if you're applying for a 4-year college or something like that, that it's not as bad as that. But one of the advantages, even if you just do the internship and then you no longer actively have that clearance, you qualify to do that. So if you're looking for another job with us or somebody else later, it's very easy to get that turned back on. Yes, so you really, even if you're not doing anything that's considered classified, in order to work on our computer systems, really to have the best benefit in that, you want to have that clearance. For the internships, it's none of the above. The internships, they're formally contractors, and it's 7,000, 7,500. There's a first year, and there's a returning that's slightly higher, and those numbers are right on that website. So that SSEP program that I mentioned actually is a GS. So that's actually, there's kind of a subtle difference with that.
We do have a couple of questions online. So first of all, Lucas is asking, is there a credit requirement for the college programs? E.g., can I do this as a college freshman?
You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say, go look at the website. I believe the answer is if you are a freshman, if you just graduated high school, you're still in the high school program. If you're starting in the fall, you have not started. If you are a freshman now, yes, you, and I don't know if they actually define that credit hours. So if you're a case that you're a freshman and you've enrolled as a freshman last year, you can apply. If there's a specific credit number hour, you have to go look at the website.
Next, we have a question from Nashla Online, who's asking, would you still be able to apply if you don't have any recommenders? I suppose references in that case.
I don't know. I don't know whether they make that. I think you do need some references.
Okay. Next one.
Next question from Katrina. Are there any GPA requirements?
Yes. I don't know what they are. Top of my head.
And the next question from Francisco, for the NREP, is it just the application in the website, or will we then be picked for interviews after that?
The answer is it's such a large program that it depends. Sometimes they pick them right off, or quite often what they'll do is a phone type interview within that. Yep.
Student I was in one of the internships. Will you guys retain the spot for me for the following internship, or do I have to reapply?
You always have to reapply. You always have to reapply.
Are there these special circumstances if I'm reapplying?
Quite often, the person you were working with before knows that you're there, and then they can request you. So it's everybody has to do it all over again. But it's often there are a lot of people who will return within that. So it is possible, just like any workplace type thing, that it's possible they don't have a place for you to return. But it is quite often that people return because it works out for everybody.
Because if there isn't a spot there, Can they help you find different
Uh,
spots?
Yeah, yeah. We encourage staying in communicate. If you've worked with somebody, staying in communication with them is a great thing. It's a great thing to do that. And within the managers. And we certainly know as the managers of the program, students who have been repeat within that. We know that right away. So it usually works itself out. Yep.
Ezekiel from online asking, I'm a college sophomore right now, and one of the opportunities require recommenders. What do I put if I don't exactly have any? I did a bunch of stuff in high school, but I've only been in college classes since starting.
I would say maybe talk to some if you have some advice from either literally from parents, mentors, other people in college on who to use as a recommend. I mean, from anything you've done, from high school sports to college uh, activities or others can be recommends. So they do not have to be. You can think wider than just I need professor that I've worked on a research project with that's related to the thing I'm applying for. Has to be that one that for my technical skills. It can be a personal reference of I know this person and I think they would be worth considering for that program. So I would say think widely of who you have for a recommend letter within that. Can be somebody in your community that you know.
Okay, next question from Joshua. How early can I apply to a listed position with NSWC knowing that I will not be able to start until after graduation in the spring?
This is another. I apologize. My answer is like a broken record here. I do it. What I would say you can look on the website if you're looking for jobs for next year after your graduation. I would look now, and you can send a question to HR on that. And in fact, I will see if that gets up on the website. But I think this is a good time to be looking for next year right now. I don't think I don't think there's any harm in applying. But also I believe they ask you in the application, when would you be ready? They don't want to say, get spooled up and ask for something in November of this year when you're graduating next year. So if you're thinking along that timeline, I commend you. That's a good way to be thinking.
Okay. Next question from Katrina. Which research lab is best for digital designing or for an electrical engineering major in general?
You're asking such a good question that it's a hard question. We'll take you at Carter Rock. And I didn't get a chance, and I'm going to take this opportunity to kind of something that really wasn't on these slides. Across the 10 NAVC laboratories that I referred to, NavAir, Dr. Malatesta's area, we take, and we have slides on this. I just threw out ones that have incredible pie charts. That we take all parts of engineering, design, analysis, mathematics, physics, chemistry. Some labs take more of one than another within that. Digital design. When you're taking engineer, and I don't want to only speak to the engineers within here. There's many other disciplines. As I mentioned, business and finance, mathematics, areas that we're highly valuable. We want to hire. We're outcompeted sometimes by many of the other employers. So I think your professors and your guidance are telling you those are great areas to go into. They're right. So digital design, machine learning, areas like that are valuable at every single one of the laboratories. They have different ones within that. We hire electrical engineers. That area where I mentioned where we're doing magnetic stealth and radar, they hire electrical engineers. Dahlgren hires electrical engineers. All of these complex air systems, guess what they hire? Electrical engineers. We have a sister lab that's not part of our local community in Philadelphia that I work with very closely. They do machinery systems, all the large electrical and mechanical machineries on ships. Guess what they hire? Electrical engineers. communications folks in UCSD, they hire. So it's across the board. It's very hard to say that one is not the others. And teamwork, people who work together on teams, that know how to specialize and work on a project, programmers, multiple things for complex systems. I think you're told in your education is very valuable, and we value that as employers. Yep.
Job experience. What is the expectation from, from whoever I'm getting mentor? Do I come in with some sort of knowledge base, or is this something that can be talked about there?
We find we want good skills at the level of your degree. If you see what I mean. There is not an area, and I think I'm speaking for everyone, where you could be expected to know the details of the things we work on. It just is highly unlikely. We hire, first thing is saying, we will hire folks from associate degrees. We will hire folks from undergraduate degrees within that. We don't hire as many as the advanced degree ones, just because there's just not as many positions, the PhD and masters, but we do hire in those areas. That's one reason we like the NDSEG and SMART, because those folks will be trained up working on a particular problem. So it's a long way. I'm not trying to entirely answer your question, but I said I would concentrate on having good skill sets that you know from your degree, and we work with that because in fact, one of the things that's not stated explicitly in here, that's one of the values of the internships. You learn that in the internship of more specific things you would need to. Yeah, so I'll pick on the EE, EE folks, they're going to know circuitry, and they're going to know radiation, they're going to know devices, and some of you're going to have a digital course, you're going to have an analog course, right? And when you finish and do that as an electrical engineer, you have that tool set. It says, oh, I'm going to use a program to design a circuit board. Well, maybe you don't know that program, but you're not knowledgeable in that area. That's what we work.
We have a couple
Yep.
more questions online here, sir.
Up from Kevin. I have letters of recommendation from my community college, but since I transferred to UC San Diego, I haven't yet had the opportunity to get letters from my professors there. Is it acceptable for my community college professors to write my letters of recommendation?
I believe that. Look at the website, but my answer is that's the authoritative is on the website. And they have a Q&A. You can ask them that question, but I believe it is good. That's kind of like my answer to the previous one. You can think more broadly for your letters of recommend.
The next question from Ezekiel. I went to one of the Carderock links and it took me to USA Jobs for the application, but there were no internship specific opportunities on there.
Look at one of the, I think I know that. Look at one of the other links in the internship slides and you'll see that.
And Ezekiel had a follow-up question. Also, are there any opportunities specifically for aerospace engineering?
Yes. That's not as strong an area at my laboratory. Dr. Malatesta in his area, very much so within that. We actually hire aero engineers to do hydrodynamics. This is another, I'll use this as an example, is some of the hydrodynamics we do are very much, and I don't want to get too technical here, but it's very much related to how the fluid interacts with the ship structure. So these ships have appendages or pods, or you think of, well, it's just a boat, but it has very complicated things that are in the water. And those water interactions with that, a lot of that is learned in the aero departments. So we will hire aero engineers, but they might do something a little different than what was in their area. But if you look at the Naval Air Labs, it might be flipped the other way around. So that's so it's not our major area. One of our strongest is mechanical engineers, For example, Indian Head, which I kind of shorted their slides there because I didn't want to talk forever. I'll have to apologize to poor Amanda on her slides. But we have places in our lab where we hire chemical engineers. But Indian Head has more places to hire chemical engineers because of their mission.
John, last question, since we want to respect everybody's time. And first of all, we want to thank you for once again being here and coming and offer these great opportunities for students and even for the faculty as well too. So Francisco has one question. What tips can you give us for answering the questions on the NRIPE?
Be truthful. It doesn't even need to be said, I hope. I mean, you're a great group of people in person, online. Be truthful, straightforward. You know, there's always the thing, whether you're applying for this job or what do you want to do, and you don't know maybe exactly what you want to do, but it's not written in stone. You know, be concise and good, and answer and say, you know, I envision the type of work that I want to do and want to consider, and it's that. So I'd say, you know, have a little bit of fun with it and good, but be saying, remember the person who's reading it is reading a lot of them. So you, every job tip you would get from a counselor office, those are the right ones. Those are the right ones. It's like any other application.
Thanks again, John. I really appreciate that. Kimberly, would you wanted to close us out and invite everybody to complete the survey? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, everyone, for attending the session this afternoon. Thank you, as always, to our partners, Dr. Barkyam, Dr. Malatesta, for sharing this important information about opportunities that we have in our local area and beyond in California. I did see in the chat, I think our guest from the furthest away is Azerbaijan. So thank you for attending. We're so glad that everybody made time. I'll just reiterate what Dr. Barkyam has said. Please visit these websites, read the information, and follow up with the contact person for your unique question or situation. So thank you again. On the screen and in the chat, please fill out a very brief survey. We'd love to know what you think about these types of programs. Would you like to see more information sessions on other topics? This is your opportunity to do that. So again, please fill this out. Thank you, everyone, and please check your emails for follow-ups with the presentation and the video. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Thank you,
Dr.
everyone.
Malatesta.